By the end of this video, when we walk up to an interactable object, an icon is going to appear above our player's head to show that it's interactable. And when we press our interact button, we'll be able to interact with the object, where then it'll do its interaction event, like dropping an item. Of course, if we left it there when we restarted our game, the chest will be closed again, and you'll be able to grab more and more items. That's silly, that's infinite potions, our game will be broken. So what we're going to do is add in our chest state to our save feature. So when we save the game and close it down and load it back up, our chest will be opened and we can no longer get more potions. No, I'm stuck with just the one. It'll have to do. So first of all, let's get something to interact with. So we'll right click in our hierarchy and go 2D object sprites square, and we'll call this our chest. In our sprites renderer, I'm going to move this sorting layer to be on the collision layer, as we will have a collider on our chest. I'm just going to move this down in our game. Now to get an image for our chest, I'm going to go to the Ninja Adventure Asset Pack, which I have linked in the description. I'll go to Items and then Treasure, and I'm going to use the little treasure chest. So I'll drag this into our Assets folder into Sprites, select this in Unity, set the pixels per unit to be 16, the sprite mode to be multiple, the filter mode to be point no filter, and the compression to be none. Click Apply, then go to the Sprite Editor. Click on the slice drop down, set this to be grid by cell size, and set this to be 16 by 16. Click slice, then click apply. Cool, now with that sliced up, we can now open up our little chest with this arrow. Click on our chest game object and drag the first top one with the chest is closed into the sprite slot. So now we have a nice little sprite for our chest. Next, our chest will want a collider, so we can check when our player is nearby it. So I'm going to click Add Component and add a Box Collider 2D. And I'm just going to edit this collider by clicking this Edit Collider button and drag it down so it fits around the box. Next, back in the root of our assets folder, I'm going to create a new script by right-clicking and going Create, C# script, and I'm going to name this Interactable. I'm going to double click on this to open it up, and in here I'm going to delete everything and start again by writing public interface Interactable. So what is an interface and why am I making an interactable interface? So in our game we're going to have things we want to interact with. Not just chests, but we might also want to interact with NPCs. So we'll have an NPC script which goes off and does things like displaying the dialogue, and chests will go off and be able to spawn items. But both of these we want to be able to interact with by pressing a button like pressing E and displaying an icon over our player's head. So in this interface we want to define the generic functions of an interactable object. One of these will be avoid, interact, and we'll also want to know, is this object interactable? So we'll do a bool called can interact. This is all we'll need in this interactable, and you may think it seems a bit pointless, but it comes in handy once you see how it's used. So back in Unity and back on our chest game object, I'm going to scroll down and go add component, new script, and call this chest. And double click on this to open out, and at the top here to make this chest an interactable, we're going to go comma interactable. Now we'll see this gets a red underline. If we hover over, we can see it's asking us to implement the interface members of interact and can interact. There's two functions we set up inside our interface. If we go on show potential fixes, we can click implement interface and it'll add these two functions in for us, which is very nice and handy. I'm just going to cut these and move them down to the bottom. And we'll leave those there for now and get back to them later. But first let's go to our variables, as we're going to want a public bool called isOpened, which I'm actually going to set using a getter and setter, which is where we do our curly braces and go get semicolon. And for the set, it's going to be a private set. So we can only set this within this script, but you can get it publicly from other scripts. Next, we're going to want a public string, which is going to be our chest ID, which we'll use for saving our chest's states, which we're going to again use a curly brace and go get private set. Next, we're going to want a public GameObject for our item prefab, which will be used for the item that the chest drops, and a public sprite, which is going to be for our opened sprite. So when the chest is opened, we'll switch the sprite over to an open chest look. So cool, we're not going to use this update, and in our start, the first thing I'm going to want to do is set our chest ID to equal a unique ID. Generating a unique ID is something handy that we could use in other scripts in the future for saving their state. We could have used it for our map areas or for our item IDs where we were generating unique IDs. So that we don't create another unique ID function just for this chest, I'm going to go back to Unity. In our assets, right click and go create script, C# script, and I'm going to create a global helper class called global helper, which I'll double click and open up. And at the top, we're going to want this to be a public static class and remove mono behavior. By this being static, this is going to be accessible from all our other scripts. So we'll put in here functions that can be used generically to do things like generate a unique ID. So let's go public static string generate unique ID, and we'll pass in a GameObject, which I'll call obj. And this GameObject will be the unique thing we're trying to create an ID for when we save. So in here, I'm going to go return $, quotes, curly braces, follow with me here, obj.scene.name, then outside the curly braces, I'm going to go underscore, then another curly braces, obj.transform.position.x, outside the curly brace, underscore, curly braces, obj.transform.position.y. So the unique ID, for example, would be something like chest underscore position X, let's say it's 3, and the position Y, maybe it was 4. So this is going to be the unique ID for our chest and for any other objects of states we want to save. So using this, we can go back to our chest script, and on our chest ID, if it isn't currently null, which we can check in a cheeky way by going !, equals, set this to our global helper.generate unique ID and pass in GameObject. Cool, next for can interact, we can do something very simple and just return not is opened. So if it isn't opened, you can interact with it. If it was opened and this was true, we don't want to be able to interact with it anymore because the chest is empty. That was an easy one. Next, when we interact with our chest, we want to say if we can't can interact, it's all very backwards, then we'll return. Otherwise, if we've got past that if check, we are going to open our chest. So let's write a private void open chest. And what we're first going to want to do is set this to be opened and then drop our item. I'm first going to write a new function, which will be a public void set opened, and I'll pass in a boolean of if we want it to be opened or not. Now that might seem strange, but when we load our game, we're going to go through and set the state of all our chests so we can reuse this function in our save controller later on. So what we could do is go is opened equals opened and then check if is opened. Then we'll change our sprite. So let's write that get component sprite renderer brackets dot sprite equals our open sprite. Now a shorter way to do this, you don't actually have to set this beforehand. Instead, you can go is opened equals opened inside this if statement, and it'll complete this assignment before then checking the result of is opened. So a handy little tip for you there. With that done, we can now use this set opened when we're opening our chest. So set opened, obviously we want this to be true as we're opening our chest, and now we want to drop our item. So we'll say if item prefab, just saying is item prefab does the same thing as checking if it's null or not. Then we'll create a game object, which will be our dropped item, and equal this to instantiate, pass in item prefab, position, I'm going to set to transform dot position, so that's the chest's position, plus vector free dot down. So if you hover over this, that's a shorthand way of writing vector free and then -1 on the y-axis. So it's going to appear 1 down from our chest's position, and then quaternion dot identity, which is just the rotation that you have to pass in. Now the reason I've set this to a dropped item is so we can add a bounce effect, same as when we're dropping our items from our hotbar. Our items do a little bounce when it appears from our chest. I'm going to add the same bounce effect. So with our dropped item, we can go dropped item dot get component and pass in bounce effect because this is on our item prefab, and then go dot start bounce. Very easy. So with this open chest script finished, up in our interact, we can now just go open chest bracket and we're done with our chest. Cool, next up, let's get our player interacting with this interactable. So back in Unity, on our player, I'm going to right click and go create empty, and I'm going to call this an interaction detector. on our interaction detector, I'm going to add a component and add a circle collider 2D. And if we zoom in on our player, we can see we've got a tiny radius around our player. I'm going to set the radius on our circle collider to be 1 so that if our player is this close to anything, we're going to be able to interact with it. I also want that icon to appear above his head. So on the interaction detector, I'm going to right click and go 2D object sprite square and call this our interaction icon. I'm going to set this sorting layer to be decor, and I'm going to set its position to be on the Y 1. So it sits just above our player's head. Cool, so back in our Ninja Adventures asset pack, I'm going to go to UI, which this is new if you haven't got the latest Ninja Adventure asset pack. It's been updated to include this emote. In this emote, I'm going to pick emote 22 and drag this into our sprites folder. Click on this and set it up again by going pixels per unit to 16, filter mode to point no filter and compression to none. Click apply. Then interaction icon, I will click on and then drag in our emote 22. And check it out, he's got a cute little emote above his head. Very nice. Now back to our interaction detector. Let's add a new component, new script. And I'll call this interaction detector. We can double click on this to open it up. And at the top, we're going to want a private interactable, which is going to store our interactable that's in range. And I'm going to set this as a default to equal null. This is going to track the closest interactable to our player. Then we're also going to want a public GameObject for our interaction icon. Cool, in our start, I'm going to set our interaction icon to .setActive and set this to be false. So this isn't above our player's head as soon as we start. We're not going to need this update, but we are going to want a onTriggerEnter2D, which, speaking of which, let me go back to Unity, and on our interaction detector, yep, it's going to want to be a trigger. So tick is trigger. Since we're using onTriggerEnter2D, we don't want this big circle colliding with anything. So cool. Is trigger ticked? Let's go back to our script. And in our onTriggerEnter2D, we're going to say if our collision.tryGetComponent. So here we're going to check if it has an interactable script on our collision object by going out INteractable. I'll just call this interactable. And if we do have an interactable component, I'm going to go double ampersands and interactable.canInteract. So can we interact with this? If so, we're going to set our interactable in range to equal this interactable, and then we'll set our interactable icon to set active brackets true. So now once this enters, our icon will appear above our head. Same thing on trigger exit 2D. Let's copy this if statement because we're going to want to do the same thing except from if we're exiting the collision of an interactable. We don't want to know if we can interact or not, but we do want to know if this interactable is equal to the interactable that we've got selected, so the one that was in range. If it is that same interactable, we can set interactable in range to be null because we've now moved away from that interactable, and we'll set our icon to be false. So it's no longer above our false. So it's no longer above our player's head. Cool, one last thing we want to add below our start. I'm going to want to add a public void on interact. This is going to be an input action, which if we hover over, we need to add in using Unity input system, as I'm using the new Unity input system for the inputs of our game. You can see this in our movement video, and we'll want this to be .callbackContext, and I'll just call this context. Then inside here, we'll go if context.performed. Do we have an interactable in range? We can check by going question mark, and if so, we'll call the interact that's on that interactable. So this won't matter if it's an NPC, a chest, whatever you want to interact with, it'll know it's something we can interact with, and then it'll call this interact function. So cool, let's go back to Unity. On our interaction detector, you can see we need our interaction icon. So let's drag that in. Cool, all set up. I'll disable the interaction icon and I'll go down to our chest. And in here, we need to add an item prefab. So what is our chest going to drop? So let's go to prefabs. And I've got my potion here, which I'll click on our chest again and drag this into the item prefab slot to assign what it drops. Then go to our sprites, and for our open sprite, I've got this other open little treasure chest, which I'll drag on in. Very cool. So let's test out our chest opening up and dropping us an item. If we click play, walk down to our chest, haha, it's interactable. Now let's press, oh, I said let's press. We haven't set up our player actions. So in your assets folder, I have my top-down template input action asset. If you double click on this, you can see I've got move, which we're currently using, and we have look and fire, which we're not using. So I'm going to delete those, get them out of my face. So on actions, there's a little plus on the side, which you can click and add a new action. I'm going to call this interact. And on no binding, I'm going to click on this, and on path, click on that drop down, and then I'm going to type E on my keyboard, because E is going to be my interact button. You can make this whatever you want. If you wanted this to be for both controllers and keyboards, you could click on this again, click add binding, and then on the path, select maybe gamepad and click button east. So whatever's on the right hand side, what's that, like X or something? B? B for interact? Sure. That's how you can add both controller and keyboard support very easily with input actions. Let's click save asset. Close this down and click on our player where we can see, if I close these, we've got our player input component. Inside here you can go to events and then player, and you can see we've got our move one set up, and now we've got our interact. Let's click on the plus. We can drag in our interaction detector to this little slot, and on no function we'll go interaction detector on interact. Very cool. So now when I press E, we're going to call that on interact function. Let's press play. So I'm going to approach from behind, press E, and there's our cute little item. Amazing. You can see after opening it, I can no longer interact. There's no, oh, I picked up the potion. There's no icon appearing above our head. Cool, but oh no, I'm going to click save. I'm going to close down our game. When I press play again, our chest is closed. And I've still got that potion that we picked up. I could just open it, get it again. Now I've got 2 potions. Unlimited potions. Don't mind if I do. Okay, but that's not right. So let's add the chest's save state to our save data and save controller. So on my game controller, I have my SaveController Script. I'm going to double click on this, and in here we use our SaveData class. An easy way to get to this script without going through our asset folder is to hold down Control and then click on SaveData. This opens it up in a little temporary tab. I'm going to right click and go Keep Tab Open so it stays in our little top bit here with us. So for our chest, we're going to want to know 2 things: the ID and is it opened. So I'm actually going to add a new system.serializable just below here of a public class chest save data. In here I'm going to add a public string of our chest ID and a public bool of is opened. Then below our hotbar save data, I'm going to go public list and pass in our chest save data and call this chest save data. Cool. Let's go back to our save controller, and at the top I'm going to want a private chest array of chests, which we're going to use to track all the chests in our scene. We can get this in our start by going chests equals find objects of type chest. Cool. To tidy this up just a little bit, as that's getting quite long in our start, I'm going to go private void initialize components, and I'm going to cut these from our start and paste them down in this initialize components. Oh, I forgot the brackets. Let's tidy this up and then call initialize components in our start function. So cool, down in our save game, here we set up all our save data. So we're going to want to go comma chest save data, and then we're going to want to get our chest save. So let's write a function which will be a private list of chest, and I'll call this get chests state. At the top we'll have a new list of chest by going list chest states equals new list chest. Then we'll go for each brackets chest in chests. Very repetitive. We'll create a new chest save data. We'll call chest save data equal new chest save data. Chest doesn't sound like a real word anymore. We're going to want chest ID to equals our chest dot chest ID, comma, is opened equals our chest dot is opened, and semicolon at the end. And then we'll want to add this to our list. So chest states dot add and pass in this new chest save data. Oh, we want this to be a list of chest save data, not a list of chests. That's why this is breaking. And we're returning a list of chest save data. Okay, cool. And then we'll return our chest states. That was very chesty. So up in our save, we can now call that get chest state, and that'll be used to save our game. Now, if we go down to where we load our game, at the bottom, I'm gonna have a new function to load chest state. So let's write a new function and go private void load chest states and pass in list chest save data. Yes, I'm doing it right this time. Call this chest states. Then we'll go for each chest in chests. So our ones at the top that we've loaded from our game, we're going to go around them and we're going to want to get the chest save data, so chest save data from our list of chest states, which we'll search for by using a dot first or default. There's a red underline, so let's hover over and use system.link, then go brackets C for chest equals greater than C.chestID equals, so is equal to chest.chestID. So we're going to match on chest ID and grab that save data. And then we'll say if chest save data is not null, then we'll go chest.setOpened to chest save data dot is opened. Cool, so that'll set up if it's opened or not. It'll set the right icon and make it interactable or not. Very nice. So let's copy this load chest states and paste it up in our load game, and in the brackets we'll pass in our save data dot chest save data. Very nice. Let's go back to Unity, press play, and now we can see our chest is closed as we haven't saved anything yet. We've got one item in our inventory. Let's press E, open it up, got the potion. Now I've got 2 items in my inventory and this has been opened. Let's go to our settings, press save, close down our game, open it back up. Haha, and now with our save state, our chest is opened. I can't get any more potions. I've only got these 2. Damn it. Very cool. Now a reminder, if you think, oh, I want this to be closed again, I need to reset that state. But my game's saved now, what do I do? You can stick a breakpoint one below on our initialized components so we can take a look at our save location, then attach to Unity, the debugger. Then when we press play, it'll hit this breakpoint. You can hover over save location. I click on the little eyeglass so it's easier, but you can copy your text here, go to your Explorer, and paste this in. If you remove that save.json and then press enter, you can see where our save data is saved. So now if I delete these, and I'll stop the debugger, now when I restart my game, we'll have no save data in our folder anymore. Now if I press play, this is going to break, but don't worry. Inventory's got no slots. That's weird, but hey, our chest is closed at least. If I try and pick up this item, well, it says inventory's full. We don't have any slots. What's going on? Okay. Our script is broken for our inventory. Let's take a look at our save controller. And when we load our game, you can see we set our inventory items for both our inventory controller and our hotbar. If I take a look at this, this is where we clear our inventory panel and create the slots for our inventory, just in case you have different slots depending on upgrades of bags. So backing our saving controller, you can see if we don't have a file for our save location to load in, we create a new one. We also generate our dynamic map here. So what's the answer of what to do? I'm going to copy and paste this inventory controller set inventory items. As this is a new save, we're going to have no items. So I'm just going to pass in a new list of inventory save data. Copy this new list and paste and do the same down in the hotbar controller set hotbar items. Now if I go to our folder again, I'll delete this save data, go back to our game. So this is the first ever load. I've never played this game before. Looks kind of cool though. Now when we load up, you can see we've got our hotbar there and our inventory slots are there. So that's a bug fix. Open up our thing, get a potion, and there he is. Now actually I just noticed something that I hadn't before in my plan. So this is another fix. I just deleted my save data again. I'm going to play again because when we open our chest, I'll walk up and we've got the icon there. I'll open it and our icon stays until we walk away. I think I'd like that to disappear as soon as we've opened our chest. So let's go back to our script. So on interact, after we've interacted, I'm going to want to go if interactable in range dot can interact, and I want to say if not interactable in range actually, so exclamation mark at the front. Then I want to set our interaction icon dot set active back to false, so it disappears straight after we can't interact anymore. Let's go test this out. Back in Unity, I'll press play. Our chest is closed. I'll walk up, there's our interaction icon. Get ready, I'll press E and it's gone. Okay, cool, that works. Now I'm happy. We're all done. That was quite a cool episode where we used some past things like our item bouncing, our save controller, and added some new cool things like our global helper. Yeah, very cool. If you enjoyed that and you want to support me or grab those scripts yourself so you don't have to write them, you can join my Patreon for just $7 a month, which is £5 a month, where you can grab every script I've ever written on this channel. Or you can grab this whole template, this whole project for half price right now, where you'll get all our previous finished features, as well as any of the future updates updates for free. But if not, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one where we'll be adding NPCs to our game with a simple dialogue system. So that's very exciting. Hope you enjoyed and have a nice day. Bye!